"Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel." She walked by me in silence. Not angry, not in a hurry. Just indifferent. She was humming something off-key, scrolling on her phone, the same way you do in line at a gas station. I had just folded her laundry. Not to be sweet, just because I couldn't stand stepping on her socks anymore. She didn't notice. Not the folded laundry. Not the vacuum stairs. Not me. That night I tried again, like a fool. I climbed into bed and whispered a joke I once knew would make her giggle. She didn't even look at me. I leaned in to kiss her shoulder. Something simple, something soft. Without pausing, she muttered, "Your kisses make me pity you." No anger, no heat, just fact. I stayed frozen for a few seconds, waiting for the just kidding that never came. Then, as if I was taking too long to be wounded, she sighed and added, "Get off." So I did. But I didn't just get off the bed. I got off the train I'd been riding for years, the one where I kept chasing moments that weren't chasing me back. The next day, I didn't make her coffee. I didn't ask how her meeting went. I didn't comment on her new dress. Not that it was for me anyway. I went silent. Polite, but silent. Present, but absent. And guess what? She noticed. Not immediately, of course. For a few days, she was fine pretending I was a lamp in the corner. Quietly useful, always glowing, never speaking. But then she started checking my phone screen over my shoulder. Asking who I was texting. Asking why I was humming. Me. Humming. But the thing is, it wasn't another woman. Not yet. What she didn't know was that her apathy, those small dismissals, that single phrase, had opened a door inside me. And what was on the other side would burn everything down. The silence between us wasn't planned. It just grew like mold behind wallpaper. I didn't slam doors. I didn't shout. I simply stopped being the man who asked how her day was, who reached for her hand in the dark, who waited for her to come down for dinner before taking a bite. I started eating alone, sleeping on the edge, breathing differently, and that was the thing that started to unnerve her. Not rage, not accusations, but peace. She asked, one evening, "Why are you being weird?" I looked at her, genuinely puzzled, and said, "I'm just doing what you do." That shut her up for a moment, but not for long. "Don't be passive-aggressive," she snapped. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She could feel it, the power shift. The oxygen had changed. It wasn't revenge. I wasn't trying to win anything. I was just tired of bleeding in front of someone who never even bothered to bring a bandage. 3 days later, I noticed her putting on lipstick before going out. At night. No explanation, no goodbye kiss. Not that I expected one. She used to tell me everything, even when it didn't matter. Now, I didn't even get the courtesy of a fake excuse. I stayed up that night, not because I cared where she was, but because something in me needed to stop pretending I didn't already know. The signs were there. Long showers with her phone on the sink. Sudden laughter in rooms I wasn't in. The smell of men's cologne on her blazer that wasn't mine. She came back late, her heels clicking like she wanted me to hear. She looked surprised to see me awake. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" I shrugged. "Just thinking." "About what?" I looked her straight in the eye. "About how a person can miss someone who's sitting 5 feet away." She blinked, opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then walked past me. Again. That night I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and finally asked myself the question I'd been too afraid to ask. If she truly didn't care, why did she still get angry when I stopped trying? The next morning was when everything started to crack. Not loudly, but visibly. She poured herself coffee, then poured a second mug. Mine. Placed it down in front of me like a peace offering. "I thought you liked oat milk?" she asked casually. I nodded, took a sip, and said nothing. She waited, fidgeted, bit her lip. She wasn't used to silence being this sharp. I knew something was coming. I could feel it. The way she was watching me now, trying to read me like she'd forgotten the language. And just like that, she gave herself away. Her phone buzzed. I saw the name light up on her screen. Trevor. She grabbed it too fast. Face down. But not fast enough. Because here's the thing, I don't know any Trevor. But apparently she did. For 2 days, I said nothing about the name I saw light up on her phone. Trevor. The name echoed in my head like a drumbeat, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I wanted to be sure. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted to give her a chance to come clean. But she didn't. Instead, she became sweeter. Out of nowhere. That's what told me something was definitely off. She made dinner the next night. Actual dinner. Not reheated takeout, not cereal at 10 p.m. But roasted chicken, herb potatoes, and even a glass of wine poured for me without asking. She wore a soft blouse I hadn't seen in months, and her makeup looked too perfect for just a Tuesday. The entire time, she asked me questions like we were on a first date. I answered with short, polite replies. I could tell it rattled her. Then she leaned forward and said, "You've been distant lately." I nodded. "I know." She waited for me to elaborate. I didn't. So she said, "Is everything okay?" And I smiled, not because I was happy, but because the irony was just too loud not to laugh at. Depends on your definition of okay. That night, I did something I thought I'd never do. I went through her phone. While she was showering, I waited for the sound of the water to build, then picked it up. She hadn't changed her passcode. Still 0429, our anniversary. What I found didn't surprise me. It just broke something inside me that had already been cracking. Her message thread with Trevor was hidden under a fake contact name, Sandy Soap. Creative, but not creative enough. Inside the thread were weeks of texts, some flirty, some explicit, some just casually cruel. "He brought me coffee again today. So sad. He doesn't get it." I told him his kisses feel like guilt. Faced with tears of joy, "I'm counting down the days until I can finally leave without feeling bad." Maybe. She was using me like a background actor in a life she'd already rewritten. And the worst part? She didn't even feel guilty. She felt bored. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I didn't confront her. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just sat in the living room with the lights off again, thinking about how many quiet betrayals I'd mistaken for normal life. She walked past me in her towel, barely even noticing I was sitting there. She smelled like vanilla shampoo and someone else's approval. The next morning, I didn't eat breakfast. I left the house without telling her where I was going. I wandered around the city like a ghost, drinking black coffee on a park bench and wondering when exactly I stopped existing in my own home. And then something strange happened. Around noon, she called me. I didn't pick up. Then she texted, "Everything okay? Where are you?" I just replied with one word, "Home." Let her wonder, because something in her tone, in that one message, told me she wasn't as in control as she thought, and she was starting to panic. Trevor was a fantasy, but I was her reality, her predictable, dull, emotionally bruised husband, and I had just stopped playing the role. That scared her more than anything, but not as much as what I was about to do next. When I saw the name Trevor on her screen, I didn't scream, didn't accuse, didn't spiral. I sat with it, like a paper cut that doesn't bleed at first, but stings for hours. I didn't want to lose control, not because I had a plan, but because I was tired of being the emotional punching bag in this one-sided marriage. That weekend, I acted like nothing had changed. We went grocery shopping together, the first time in months. She made a comment about a recipe she wanted to try, and I said, "Sounds good." I think she mistook my calm for healing. But the truth was, I wasn't healing. I was studying her, observing. I noticed how often she smiled while texting. I watched how her phone never left her hand, not even in the bathroom. I saw the way she started dressing up again, suddenly caring about how she looked even while taking out the trash. Then came the Saturday night dinner invite. One of her coworkers was throwing a small gathering. I wasn't excited, but I agreed to go. Something told me I needed to see this through. The house was clean, modern, almost sterile. Wine glasses clinked in the kitchen while people made fake small talk about promotions and yoga retreats. That's when I saw her. Cassandra's body language changed the second we walked in. Her shoulders tightened. Her eyes scanned the room like she was tracking someone. I asked, casually, "Is Trevor here?" Her expression froze for half a second. Just enough. She laughed awkwardly. Who's Trevor? I shrugged. Just thought I saw the name somewhere. Then I walked away and left her standing there, trying to recover. She joined a group of people and laughed too hard at jokes that weren't funny. But I wasn't watching her anymore. I was watching him. Trevor was real. And not just real. He was standing 10 feet away, drink in hand, talking to her with the confidence of someone who'd been far too intimate, far too recently. His eyes kept flicking toward me, unsure. Her body leaned toward him out of habit. The chemistry wasn't subtle, it was humiliating. I didn't make a scene. I just waited for her to come home. When she finally did, she acted like everything was fine. I asked her how the party was, and she said, "Nice. Kinda boring, actually." I nodded and said, "Yeah." Trevor looked bored too. She went pale. That was the first real reaction I'd seen in weeks. "Who?" she asked too fast. "Cassandra. I'm not stupid," I said quietly. "But I am tired." She didn't respond. She just stood there, cornered, trembling, finally exposed. But this wasn't the moment I confronted her. No, I was saving that. The next day, I made a private phone call. Not to Trevor, to a lawyer. Because if she wanted to see what silence looked like, she was about to find out how loud it could become when it ended. I didn't tell the lawyer everything. Not yet. I just asked general questions. About how separation works. About what documentation I'd need. About how custody is handled if there are no kids. Just a shared mortgage and a few shattered dreams. The attorney was calm, methodical. He'd heard the story before, probably 100 times. But I hadn't lived it before. For me, it was all fresh, all still bleeding. I came home to silence. She was upstairs. I could hear the faint sound of her laughing on a call. That soft, flirty laugh she hadn't used on me in years. I didn't need to ask who she was talking to. I already knew. Trevor wasn't just a mistake. He was a new storyline she'd been rehearsing in private. That night, I left the house again. No destination. I ended up at a late-night diner I hadn't visited in years. I sat there with a cup of bad coffee, staring out the window while two teenagers argued about nothing at the next booth. The normalcy of it all hurt. Everyone else's life seemed so simple. Meanwhile, I was married to someone who pitted my touch and texted another man while lying next to me in bed. But here's what changed. I no longer felt sad. I felt numb. And then, suddenly, I felt something dangerous, clarity. I wasn't trying to fix anything anymore. I wasn't hoping for answers. I didn't want her tears or her apologies. I wanted closure, clean exit. But I also wanted her to see what she had done. Not just hear it, feel it. So I started planning. The next morning, I told her I needed a few days alone. A work trip. It was a lie. I had no job to travel for. But I booked a quiet Airbnb across town, changed all my passwords, and opened a separate bank account. In just 48 hours, I transferred my savings, logged every suspicious message I had found, and made copies of every document with both our names on it. She didn't question anything. She actually seemed relieved. "A little space will be good," she said. "We've both been off lately." She kissed me on the cheek before I left. The same woman who said my kisses made her feel sorry for me. The irony was almost poetic. I left the house at 7 a.m. and didn't look back. At least not yet. From my rental, I watched her habits. When she left, when she came home, how she dressed, who came by. I didn't hire a private investigator. I became one. Quietly, carefully, I followed her. And that's how I ended up in the parking lot of a chain hotel one rainy evening, sitting in my car with the engine off, watching her step out of hers, laughing, umbrella-less, as he stepped out of the passenger seat and opened the door for her. She didn't look sad. She didn't look nervous. She looked alive. And I knew in that moment, she was never going to tell me. She had already erased me from her story. But I wasn't going to let her end it on her terms. No shouting, no begging, no revenge. Just one final, quiet reveal. And soon, she'd find it waiting for her at home. I didn't go back home that night. I waited to see if she would text, call, ask where I was. She didn't. Instead, around midnight, I saw her car pull into the driveway through the Airbnb's live feed I had quietly set up a week earlier. She came home alone. Or at least she walked in alone. That was all I needed to know. The woman who used to panic if I didn't text back after 30 minutes didn't even blink when I vanished overnight. By the next morning, the plan was in motion. I sent her a short message. "I'll be back Tuesday. Don't wait up." No questions from her. No follow-up. Just a K. That cold, single-letter response was my green light. I took the day to gather everything. Printed messages, bank statements showing her sudden withdrawals, screenshots of her sandy soap chats with Trevor, and a copy of the hotel reservation under her name that I had found buried in her email trash folder. She wasn't even careful. That was the insult. Then came the letter. Handwritten. 1 page. No yelling, no guilt-tripping. Just my voice laid bare. I told her I knew. I told her how long I had known. I told her what it felt like to be pitted by the person I once would have bled for. I didn't demand anything. I didn't ask for explanations. I just made one request. That she read it all before she spoke to me again. And that when she was ready to be honest, fully honest, she'd find me at the address written on the last line. I left the letter on our bed, with a copy of our wedding photo beneath it. The back of the frame had the hotel receipt tucked inside. I locked the door behind me and walked away, still unsure what I was feeling. Not vengeance. Not even peace. Just stillness. Like the part of me that used to cling to hope had finally exhaled. The next 2 days were quiet. I stayed off social media. Didn't check her status. Didn't ask mutual friends if she was okay. I focused on packing what I needed into a suitcase. Not clothes, but my dignity. If she wanted Trevor, she could have him. But she would never again have me without earning it. And then, Tuesday morning, the message came. 3 words. "Can we talk?" No punctuation. No apology. No explanation. But I knew what it meant. I didn't reply. Not yet. I waited. Hours passed. Then another message followed. "Please." Now that was new. The woman who mocked my affection, who turned her shoulder at my touch, was asking me to talk. I waited another hour. Then I texted back the address and wrote, "If you're not honest, don't come." That night, at exactly 8:12 p.m., headlights appeared outside the Airbnb. I stood behind the curtain, heart pounding like I hadn't felt in years. Not from fear, from finality. She knocked. I opened the door, stepped aside, and watched her walk into the room like she was stepping onto a minefield. She wasn't ready for what I was about to ask, but she was even less prepared for what I already knew. And this time, she wouldn't be the one holding all the power. She stepped inside like she was walking into someone else's home. Nervous hands. Hair fixed too perfectly. Her eyes moved around the small Airbnb like she was searching for safety in furniture, avoiding mine. She held her purse like a shield and opened her mouth, but I cut her off before she could start performing. "Don't explain anything yet," I said calmly. "I just want you to sit and listen." She sat, quietly. For the first time in months, she didn't have a comeback. No sarcastic breath. No eye roll. Just silence. I handed her a manila envelope. Inside, every printout, every photo, every message I'd saved. It wasn't to hurt her. It was to make it impossible for her to lie again. The mask had to come off completely. She flipped through it slowly, her fingers trembling more with each page. When she got to the screenshots of the texts to Trevor, the ones where she called me pathetic, she stopped. Her jaw clenched. Her eyes watered. But she didn't cry. She looked up and said the one thing I didn't expect. "I didn't think you'd find out like this." I laughed. Quietly. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. "That's your first reaction?" She looked ashamed, but I wasn't buying it. I asked, "Was it worth it?" She didn't answer. Just stared at her hands like they might disappear if she looked hard enough. Was I really that unbearable to be around? That unlovable? I asked again, my voice cracking in places I didn't plan for. "Because I begged you to talk to me. I begged you to tell me what was wrong. And instead, you gave your affection to a stranger and handed me your contempt." She finally spoke. It wasn't that I didn't love you, I just didn't know how to anymore. That line, that cliché, it landed like a punch, because it was too late for half-truths. I told her plainly, I was drowning next to you, Cassandra, and you kept pretending you didn't see it. Then she cried, genuinely, maybe for the first time in years, but not because she regretted the affair, because she had been exposed. And suddenly, her carefully controlled narrative, where she was the victim of a boring marriage, didn't hold up anymore. I didn't comfort her. I didn't wipe her tears. I let her sit in them. I'm filing, I told her. The papers will arrive by the end of the week. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm not kicking you out. I'm just done. She nodded, then whispered, what if I want to fix it? I paused. And for the first time since she said my kisses made her pity me, I felt something shift inside me. Not love, not hate, just clarity. Then you should have wanted that before I became a ghost in my own marriage. She stayed seated, like her legs didn't trust her anymore. I opened the door, not angrily, just firmly. She stood up, walked past me without a word, and left. And that's when the air finally changed. Not because she was gone, but because I was back. After she walked out that night, I stood there for a long time, staring at the door. I wasn't angry anymore, not numb either. I felt still, like someone had finally lifted a weight that had been sitting on my chest for years. I breathed in, not like a broken man, but like someone coming back to life. And for the first time in forever, it didn't feel like she held the remote control to my self-worth. In the days that followed, she sent a few texts, some apologetic, some confused. One of them even asked if I'd be willing to start fresh. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because what I had now wasn't a cold shoulder or revenge. It was freedom. Real, silent, unshakable freedom. I finalized the paperwork. Quietly, peacefully. No shouting matches. No chaos. Just signatures, a clean break, and the return of my own voice. And in that space, the space where her silence used to echo, I started hearing my own thoughts again. I took a short trip to the coast. Just me, a small cabin, and a dog I borrowed from a friend. I watched sunrises. I read books I forgot I loved. I wrote in a notebook, not to document pain, but to rediscover who I was before pity replaced passion. As for her, I heard through a mutual friend that things with Trevor didn't last long. Apparently, fantasy is harder to maintain when real life shows up with rent, routine, and regret. She tried reaching out once more, months later, just a short email that ended with, I didn't know how to love you when you stopped needing me. That line stayed with me not because it hurt, but because it showed me how far I'd come. I didn't need to be needed anymore. I didn't need validation from someone who saw me as disposable. I had walked through betrayal, silence, and heartbreak, and somehow I had come out of it whole. So this is where my story ends. Not with flames or fury, but with peace. And to anyone watching this who feels like they're being erased in their own relationship, hear me clearly. You are not invisible. You are not too much. You are not unworthy of love that shows up, stays present, and sees you. I'm not who I used to be. I'm something better, something stronger. And I owe that not to her betrayal, but to my survival. Thanks for watching the full story here on Reddit Confessions. If this hit you in any way, if it reminded you of something or someone, drop a comment below and tell us. What historical event changed the way people saw love, loyalty, or freedom? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Subscribe for more real, raw, and honest stories, where the truth always finds a voice.